I was born to a middle-class, 100% religious family. I went to religious school till I could. In 1944, everything changed in Budapest. My parents probably knew this before because we tried to go to Palestine. They sold everything we owned. And the first ship that we were supposed to go with was not allowed to leave anymore. So we got stuck in Budapest. My father was taken into the so-called working camp, and I was living with my mother. I don't remember the exact date, but there was a time when we had to move out of our comfortable apartment into a house which was designated only for Jews to live there. On the front of the house, there was a big yellow star. Luckily, my mother had a friend who lived there, and she gave us one of her rooms. At the time, we didn't appreciate it enough that from our apartment, we still had a room of our own. Every day there were new regulations. We couldn't go out only in a certain time of the day. Of course, on that specific time, all the prices, everything went up, but we were still able to live relatively normal life, if you could call it a relatively normal life, that in a building had only children, women, and elderly. I don't know till today, and unfortunately my mother is not here to know, that how did the word got around that in the city, Budapest, there was this man who was giving out what was called Schutzpreis. Schutzpreis is an identification paper which the Swedish government guaranteed that these people who held these documents were under the Swedish government protection. My mother went every single day to stand in line to get one of these papers. She really played with her life because it was obvious that only Jews were standing there. And by that time, it wasn't only the Germans. There was a Hungarian group called Nyilas, in English it's the Arrow Party, who were probably even worse than the Nazis. Because I still know that the Nazis killed Jews because it was their job. The Hungarian Aerosmith, they did because it gave them pleasure. Anyway, after the second or third day, my mother came home happily that she had the Schutzpreis in her hand. We packed, I think, 2 bags, I don't even remember, and we moved into this designated house, which I do not remember the address, but I know that it was close to the Danube. This time, we didn't have a room of our own. There were lots and lots of people. We had a corner of our room. Every single day, 3 times a day, the Nazis, with their boots, came up to examine our papers. And you have to understand that the buildings in Europe, the staircases are high, long, marble, and these Nazis came with by their boots, one, one, one. And every one of us, our hearts were beating that was going to happen. They came, they looked at everybody's papers, and they left. In our room, there was only one family with 3 children. They were scared also, but probably less than the rest of us, because they were the only ones who really had the original paper. All the rest of us had only copies and false. The third day, the Nazis came, again with the boots, and when they saw these people's paper, and it was different than everybody else's, they thought that's the wrong one. They took away the family, and we never saw them again. And I have to add only one thing. I don't know if you're familiar. There is a beautiful Lehár song about the Blue Danube. Everybody all over the world sings that song. But I just want to tell you that in 1944, there was no Blue Danube. It was red from all the Jewish blood. Anyway, after this, it didn't look very safe anymore, because every day they came, and we thought every day they're just going to take another family or whatever. Again, my mother found out that there is an orphanage. And this orphanage was under the protection of the Red Cross. After that, my mother took me to this orphanage, which was open during the year, maybe 40 people, 40 children with bunk beds, but this time they put down mattresses wall to wall, and we were over 100 children who stayed there. I don't know why, where, or how, but my mother was able to find a small salami. And before she said goodbye, she gave me this salami. And she said, save this salami and eat it only when you're so hungry that you're really starving. So I put this salami under my mattress, waited every night till everybody went to sleep, and I took it out every night just to smell it. I'm not sure if I smelled it because of the meat, or I don't know if I smelled it because it reminded of my mother, but that's what I did. And one of these nights, at the end of the hall, the ladies who were taking care of us, they were talking among themselves, and I heard them that they were saying that next week we're taking the children to the ghetto. But Budapest didn't have a ghetto. I had no idea what a ghetto is, but the way how they were talking, the sound of it sounded that it's a dangerous place. So the girl who was sleeping next to me, I woke her, and I said, Aggie, they're taking us to the ghetto. Today, with an adult mind, I know that I woke her up from deep sleep. She didn't know what a ghetto is, so she started to cry. Vera said that they're taking us to the ghetto. So this is the only time in my life that I was spanked by adults for lying. Nevertheless, the same time when my mother gave me the salami, she also gave me some postcards which were addressed and stamped to a Hungarian neighbor of my grandmother, and she said, if you want to and if you can, send her a postcard. I did write to her that next week they're taking us to the ghetto. And you have to believe that you were saved only by miracle. Because I told you earlier that Hungarians were really, really anti-Semite. This is before we had the post office going through with machinery. Every piece went through by hand, yet this postcard arrived to where I had sent it to. The following week came. We never spoke about this again, not with the children, not with the adult. We were just told in the morning, wear your warmest clothes. We got dressed, and I was the shortest child, so I was the first one in the line, and a policeman was holding my hand, and from far away I saw my mother is coming. So I said, Mommy, Mommy! She said, don't call me your mother. But I didn't realize that she wasn't wearing her yellow star, which meant immediate killing. And she went over to the policeman and said that I'm a good friend of this girl's mother, and she's dying, and I promised her that one more time I come to look at her. Whether the policeman believed it or not, I don't know, but he let go of my hand for a minute, and my mother grabbed my hand and we ran away. You also have to understand that this was during wartime. There were bombing day and night, and this was probably the first day that there was no public transportation. So we just walked and walked and walked, and what I didn't know till then, that because Budapest was bombed all the time, the non-Jews, if they could, they left from Budapest, they went out to the countryside, because there the bombing was much less. So there were empty houses. Empty houses, again, Budapest did not have, or nobody those days, refrigeration. So people had hoarded, especially because it was wartime, potatoes and flowers and onions by the bags. And that's what we ate for days and days and days and days. And at night, we would go out to get some fresh air. But the bombs were coming. And this was a small house. There was no shelter or anything. The funny thing is that even today, I remember that we were not scared. Somehow we felt the bomb or not bomb, it's our friends. But again, one day a bomb fell right on the stone gate between us and the house next to us. So from after that day, we couldn't even go out anymore because we were totally exposed. So the windows were closed. There was a regulation that all windows had to be blocked. The previous owners had put that on because of lighting and the bombing. So we would just, at night, we would just peek out a little bit every night, and we saw some shadows next door. After being there for, I would say, 10 days or so, 2 weeks or so, and of course the first day there was potato and onion soup, the following day there was, I don't know, and the last week there was only beans and beans and beans. And one day my mother said, you know, I didn't see any of those shadows walking. So the following day specifically we stayed by the window watching, and there was none. So my mother got dressed, she put on a big handkerchief on her like a peasant woman and went outside. And about an hour later she came back and she said, the war is over, the war is over. She came back with a piece of meat. I haven't seen meat by that time, I don't know, for months or months or months. Yet for some reason I couldn't eat it. Only later on she told me that it was a piece of horse meat that they carved out from dead horses on the street. So the war was over as far as we knew. My mother said, we have to go back to grandmother, who lived in a small house, and we had no idea what happened to grandmother. All we knew that she was taken away probably to a labor camp. So my mother said, we have to go back to the house because we have to take care of it by the time grandma comes home. So again, we walked and walked and walked and walked, and we got to grandma's house, but a large family was living there. And even today, I don't know that how it happened that from Nazism, within one day, it became communism. And the communist idea was that a small family like my mother and I, we couldn't have a large apartment. But we were Jews, they had to give something to us, so we got back one room from that. In essence, it was Raoul Wallenberg who saved our lives, because you didn't know from one day to the next what's going to happen. But if he wasn't there, if we couldn't stay, even for the short time that we stayed in this house, I am sure not my mother, not myself would be here, and it means my son, my grandchildren, and all the next generation and generations that are coming, because he gave us a safe place. It became known, and I'm not sure exactly how, that front of the Swedish government, Swedish embassy, consulate, there is a man who is actually giving out certificates. We call them, and I think everybody called them Schutzpasses, which in essence said that the bearer of this certificate is under the protection of the Swedish government. And my mother was standing in line for days and days, but at the end she got this certificate, and this brought us time, this gave us time. We went into the Swedish protected house, and that's why I am convinced that I'm alive, and that's why I'm convinced that I have a family, and generations will come. So I'm grateful forever to Raoul Wallenberg. Every once in a while somebody asks me to speak to children. I'm not a speaker, but I feel that it is my duty to tell it, because I am the last generation that people can say that I knew a survivor. After that, people will just say that I knew a survivor's child. So I feel it's my duty to tell it to people what's happening. And I'm not sure, I'm not a politician, I'm just saying what I feel. And don't misunderstand me when I say that a Shoah cannot happen again. I don't mean it that the people of the war are any nicer than they were. for one reason or other, people always want to kill Jews. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying that there cannot be a Shoah anymore because there is Israel now. And sometimes when I see an IDF soldier, I do tell them that you are not here only for your country. You are here for all the Jews. In the late 1930s, early 40s, there was a ship called the St. Louis, where people were actually able to buy tickets, got visas to Cuba, and went to Cuba. And once when they got there, the Cuban government said, oops, I'm sorry, we changed our mind, you can't come here. So the captain of the ship told the people, not to worry, we are so close to America, we go to New York, you're going to have a better life. And they turned around, and the people were happy, and they came to New York, and they came to New York. And in New York, the government said, oops, we are sorry, you cannot come here. And this ship went from port to port. And nobody wanted them, nobody allowed them, so they went back to Europe, and most of them perished. And this is, again, my opinion, that Hitler allowed these people to go, and he watched the world. And when he saw that nobody cares about a Jew, that's when they really went full ahead with their extermination. But, again, I'm saying it, that as long as there is an Israel where they allow anybody to come in, even the Vietnamese, that nobody in the world wanted, there cannot be another show.